He only had to pay $8,700 for the abandoned beach house that Marilyn Monroe once frequented, a crumbling wreck that the people of Santa Monica avoided as if it still harbored something dangerous. Cole Maddox thought he was gambling the last money of his life on an unnaturally cheap piece of real estate, but when he discovered the secret basement behind the old wood paneling and found the microfilm that had been buried for 60 years, he realized he had just stepped into a story that wasn't just valuable. It was dangerous, worth $500 million and guarded by secrets that the most powerful people in Hollywood were willing to kill to keep buried. Before we dive into this breathless journey, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we'll tell you another story that will shock you even more. Cole Maddox, 45 years old, once a notorious Hells Angels member in Ventura County, was now just a shadow, living alone on the edge of the Pacific as if the whole world had turned its back on him. After the sudden death of his girlfriend during a botched surgery, a pain he never found answers for that completely broke him, destroying his faith in people and in himself. The motorcycle shop he had built over nearly 2 decades shut down due to bankruptcy. The bank foreclosed without mercy, forcing him to leave the place that had been like a second family. Now Cole slept in his old pickup parked at Point Mugu, showered at coastal rest stops, and survived on odd jobs that paid next to nothing, most of which people didn't even want to give him, because of the tattoos covering his arms and a wrongful criminal record that still clung to the system like an accusation that would never fade. The brothers he once called family were scattered everywhere, some in prison, some far away, some out of touch, leaving Cole alone with endless days and nothing to hold on to. In the moment he thought he had hit rock bottom, sitting in the truck cab with the door cracked open watching rain fall on the ocean, Cole spotted an auction listing on his cracked screen phone, an abandoned beach house in Santa Monica, priced so low it was unbelievable for prime oceanfront land. The rumors below said the house had been a secret hideout for Marilyn Monroe in her final weeks, a location neither fans nor tabloids had ever confirmed. Cole read those words over and over, hypnotized. A mysterious house, suspiciously cheap, tied to a legendary name, and most importantly, it was the only chance he had left to grab. He checked his bag, counted his last savings, an amount enough to gamble but not enough to survive another failure. Amid the sound of waves crashing against the rocks and the faint lights of Santa Monica Pier reflecting on the cold black water, Cole wondered if a man who had lost everything still had any shot at starting over. He took a deep breath, looked toward the silver-streaked horizon, and thought if life still had one door left for him, it was probably inside that abandoned house. The next morning, Cole drove his old truck down the Pacific Coast Highway to see the place, and the second he pulled up he knew something was off. Prime Santa Monica oceanfront real estate, where every inch was worth a fortune, yet abandoned for decades. The house stood silent in the early sun, paint faded by time, but the front door was too new, like it had been replaced recently and then left to gather dust, creating a creepy contrast. Cole walked closer and immediately noticed another odd detail, an old security camera hanging under the eaves, lens dusty, but the tiny indicator light still weakly blinking, as if someone had never truly abandoned the place. He scanned the sandy yard and saw a jumble of footprints, deep and shallow, definitely men's shoes, not animals, leading around back before disappearing at the rocks. Cole pushed the door open and stepped inside, feeling like he had walked into a time machine. The interior perfectly preserved from the 1950s, cream leather sofa, brass-based lamps, glass cabinets displaying vintage items, all covered in dust but untouched, as if the occupant had only left a few days ago. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains and highlighted a small object on the vanity, a hand-carved wooden box engraved MM, that made Cole's heart skip. He opened it, empty, but the faint scent of old wood mixed with powder still lingered. On the wall hung a faded Polaroid taken from behind of a woman standing at the ocean, blonde hair gently blowing, not showing her face but the curve of her shoulders and stance so eerily like Marilyn Monroe that Cole had to stare for a long time to believe his eyes. When he stepped outside for air, Cole met an old man from the neighboring house, who immediately recognized the curiosity in his eyes. The man spoke softly but firmly. They say this was where Marilyn hid from the paparazzi in her last weeks. The owner was Arthur Kellerman, a film production assistant, disappeared from Hollywood after 62. The story added another layer of darkness to the house. When Cole glanced down the street, he caught sight of a black SUV parked at the curb, windows tinted, engine off but clearly occupied. The vehicle pulled away the moment Cole looked again. a move that said he wasn't the only one interested in the Dune house. Unease crawled up his spine, but before he could think too long, the auction manager appeared, handed Cole a key to view the house, and said in a restrained voice, "This house isn't simple. A lot of people have asked about it, but once they go inside, they all run. I can't tell you whether to buy it or not, but be careful." That warning didn't deter Cole. On the contrary, the mystery tightened its grip on him. A place tied to Marilyn, abandoned yet still monitored, mysterious footprints, untouched vintage items, everything combined into a strange pull that made Cole believe this could be the new chapter of his life, the rare chance to climb out of the abyss he'd been sinking in for years. But as he walked back to the yard to leave, Cole clearly felt eyes watching his every move, as if the house didn't just hold secrets, it was being guarded or watched by someone lurking in the shadows. Cole left Santa Monica with a head full of unanswered questions and drove straight to Ventura to find Tanner Briggs, his most trusted old brother, a biker with a razor-sharp analytical mind who had worked in classic car and seized property auctions. The moment Tanner heard about the house, his face changed. He didn't laugh, didn't ask questions, just quietly opened his laptop, pulled records and flipped through public documents. Less than 5 minutes later, Tanner frowned deeply, as if seeing something that had no business being in a normal real estate transaction. Large sections of the files blacked out with thick marker, not the usual redaction for personal info but legal cover-ups. Some papers bore confirmation signatures from MGM Studios' legal department, extremely unusual since a studio had no reason to be involved in ownership of a private beach house. Tanner sighed, leaned back and spoke slowly, so Cole would grasp the gravity. "This house is anything but normal. If records are blacked out like that, someone doesn't want anything seen, and if MGM ever touched it, this property could be tied to something much bigger, maybe involving famous people from back then." Cole looked down at his hands, the hands that once gripped a Harley's handlebars across state lines, that once saved his girlfriend from a crash, but that had also been wrongfully cuffed because of cheap slander. He asked quietly, "You think I should walk away?" Tanner gave a small laugh. "Nobody asks me that after coming to me, but brace yourself. This auction won't be normal. There are people who don't want you stepping foot in that house again." Cole knew Tanner was right, but he also knew he had no way back. He opened his wallet, counted the crumpled bills again. $8,700. Every dollar he had scraped together over months of odd jobs across California, fixing cars on the roadside, hauling loads, night cleaning in Marina del Rey. That money wasn't enough to live a few more months, nor enough to piece together a shattered life. But if he bet on this chance, it could become the foundation for everything he'd lost. That same afternoon, Tanner called a few old brothers, Rafe Dalton, Mitch Fallon, and 2 others who had ridden with Cole across Nevada in their younger days. They showed up without explanation, just looked at Cole for a moment, and clapped his shoulder. Brothers don't let you fight alone. The sight made Cole's eyes sting. It had been a long time since he felt someone had his back. That night, the group gathered around Tanner's rickety wooden table in his garage. Tanner laid out the strategy. Watch the opponents first, identify the big investors, avoid getting sucked into bidding wars, apply psychological pressure by bidding slow and steady, and most importantly, never let anyone see how desperate Cole really was. When everyone left, Cole stayed behind alone in the garage. He opened the small box under the truck seat and took out a photo of Jenna, the woman who had made him believe a guy like him could be truly loved. In the picture she was smiling, a smile as bright as the Santa Monica sunshine he hadn't seen since she died. He whispered, as if to himself, "Jenna, if I still have one shot to get back up, this has to be it." While he was lost in memories, his old phone buzzed. An email from Riley Donovan, an independent investigative reporter Cole had never met. The message was short. "If you're really entering the auction for the Dune house, be careful. Powerful forces want that house, and they won't hesitate to remove anyone in their way." No explicit threat, no advice, just a chilling warning. Cole read it over and over, the sense of danger rising like the tide. But at the same time he became more certain he wasn't wrong. That house held something powerful enough to change his life, or destroy it completely. The night before the auction, Cole couldn't sleep. He rolled his old Harley out to Venice Beach, where the pier lights stretched across the black water like thousands of fallen stars. The ocean wind was cold, salt clung to his leather jacket, and the waves pounded in rhythm like a heartbeat urging him on. This wasn't just a house purchase. This was the first battle after years of life knocking him down. He placed his hand on the Harley's tank, the machine that had carried him through so much grief, and breathed deep. Tomorrow he wasn't just bidding on an abandoned house. He was fighting to reclaim himself. Cole arrived at the Venice Beach Community Hall almost an hour early, but the place was already packed. Slick-haired investors, teams of lawyers in black suits, a few unfamiliar faces lurking in corners with eyes sharp as razors, the kind who weren't here for real estate, but for whatever was hidden inside. The smell of coffee, expensive cologne, and tension, mixed with the cold ocean air, made the room suffocating. Cole walked in wearing his faded leather jacket and worn boots, instantly drawing wary, suspicious stares, a wandering biker among a forest of money and power. Tanner, standing beside him, tilted his head and whispered, "Don't let them see you sweat. Stand tall, look them in the eye." Cole obeyed, but his heart pounded like it was trying to escape his chest. When the property list came out, he noticed many in the room didn't care about the land or the structure. They just wanted to own it. That truth sent chills down his spine, because he knew this was no ordinary sale. Then the door opened, and the atmosphere shifted like a sudden change in wind. Victor Harlan walked in, CEO of Titan Gate Studios, one of the most powerful men in Hollywood, the kind whose single word could end a career or save a movie. Perfect gray suit, eyes hard as glass, the cold smile of someone used to telling others how to live. He didn't look at anyone longer than a second, as if everyone were dust. Only when his gaze landed on Cole did he raise an eyebrow slightly, as if wondering why a biker was even there. Cold ran down Cole's spine, but he remembered Tanner's words, "In an auction room, never let them know you're scared." The bidding began. The auctioneer read the description. The Dune House, Santa Monica, 1950s structure, 2,800 square feet, situated on oceanfront land. But before he finished, paddles shot up. The opening bid was only $80,000, but jumped to $200,000, then $260,000 in 2 minutes. Cole gripped his paddle, palms sweating. Tanner whispered, "Wait, don't bid early. Let them think you can't afford it." Cole held back. A silver-haired investor called, $280,000. The lawyers representing an investment fund countered, $300,000. The room heated up, paddles flashing fast. Then Victor slowly raised his paddle and said in a low, commanding voice, $350,000. The room went silent. Several opponents lowered their paddles, unwilling to challenge him. Cole swallowed hard. It was exactly the psychological pressure Tanner had warned about, like the way Morrison in the original script crushed spirits just by showing up. Tanner murmured, "Stay calm. When the pace slows, you go in." As predicted, after $370,000, the bidding slowed. A few dropped out. The auctioneer scanned the room, ready to call sold. Then Tanner nudged Cole's foot. "Now." Cole raised his paddle, voice rough but steady. $372,000. The entire room turned to stare, a few snickers coming from the corners. But Victor reacted most. He turned fully, eyes slicing through Cole as if trying to rip his thoughts apart. He smirked. $400,000. He didn't shout, didn't look competitive. He simply spoke, and the words carried the weight of a judge's gavel. Cole's hand trembled, but Tanner placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't let him intimidate you. He's just testing." The price climbed. $410,000, $415,000, $420,000, from a group of young lawyers. Victor leaned back, exhaled as if bored, then raised his paddle again. $450,000. Half the room gave up. Tanner looked at Cole. "Let him feel confident. We're almost at the drop." As the auctioneer prepared to hammer, Tanner whispered, "Now, just a nudge." Cole took a deep breath. $451,000. A murmur swept the room, not because of the number, but because the bidder was a broke-looking biker in a faded leather jacket. Victor turned, his eyes darkening as if personally insulted. For the first time he spoke with emotion. "Who do you think you're playing with?" Cole met his stare, something he had never done with a man that powerful, and answered, "I'm bidding, same as everyone here." Tanner gave a small smile. Victor didn't raise immediately. He wasn't used to public challenge. The auctioneer looked around. $451,000. Going once, going twice. Victor smirked, started to lift his paddle, but one of his lawyers subtly shook his head, signaling they had exceeded the limit for this property. Victor lowered his hand. The hammer fell. Sold. $451,000 to bidder 27. Cole heard the gavel like thunder. He had won, really won. No one believed it, no one could explain it, and he barely believed it himself. As the crowd dispersed, Victor approached, standing very close, his breath cold as ocean wind. He spoke slowly, almost whispering. "You have no idea what you just bought." Then he placed a hand on Cole's shoulder and squeezed lightly. "A warning, and you don't know who's watching you." Cole stood frozen, heart pounding like war drums. That wasn't an idle threat. That was a declaration of war. As Victor walked away, Tanner put a hand on Cole's shoulder. "You won, but I think the real fight starts now." Cole looked out at Venice Beach, where the waves crashed against the shore in strong, cold rhythms. Cole picked up the keys that same afternoon and drove straight to Santa Monica, where the dune house sat silent like a secret buried by time under layers of sea salt. He stepped inside feeling like a man who had just won a battle without knowing how vast the war behind it really was. Dust still covered everything, yet the air felt wrong, like someone had left only weeks ago, not decades. Cole started cleaning corner by corner, pulling drop cloths off old furniture, wiping thin layers of dust from tables. When he moved the wooden cabinet next to the stairs, he heard a faint creak at the base of the wall. He knelt, ran his fingers along the floorboards, and found a thin seam. He pushed hard. A panel popped up, revealing a narrow staircase leading down. His heart tightened. A hidden basement. A chill ran down his spine. This was no longer an ordinary house. He switched on his flashlight and descended step by step. The air below was heavy, as if locked in since wartime. In the darkness, the beam landed on a large metal object in the corner, an old safe. The MGM Studios logo faded but unmistakable. Questions spun in his head. Why would a studio hide a safe under a private house? Who hid it, and why conceal the stairs? Cole immediately called Tanner and Rafe Dalton. Just a few hours later, both showed up. Tanner shone his light and let out a low whistle. "That's definitely an MGM safe. The kind used for original film prints or classified legal documents. Civilians never had these." Rafe worked the mechanical lock with tools. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the basement being ice cold. After nearly an hour of patient dialing, a soft but heavy click sounded like the past itself unlocking. The door cracked open. The smell of old paper rose, mixed with faint face powder and cheap cigarette smoke, the signature scent of 1960s Hollywood. Inside were 4 items: a reel-to-reel tape box, a large envelope hand-labeled Aid Wallace, a rusty clipped stack of papers, and an unreleased film contract. Cole lifted the tape reel, hand trembling slightly. An old recording label, dated August 2nd, 1962, 2 days before Marilyn died. Tanner loaded it into the portable reel player he had brought. Static crackled, then came a husky, slightly shaky yet soft and energetic voice, Marilyn Monroe's. Cole almost stopped breathing. This wasn't the voice from the interviews everyone knew. This one was exhausted, breathless, but underneath lay something never heard before: rage, fear, and the resolve of someone backed into a corner. "They're taking my image, and they think I don't know. That fund was set up in my name, but I've never seen a dime." The voice faded, then returned. "If anything happens to me, Edgar will know what to do. He has the copies. Don't let them bury me again." Tanner looked at Cole, face pale. This is not small." Cole opened the Ed Wallace envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from Marilyn to her attorney Edgar Wallace describing an image fund created in her name by the studio and a group of powerful men. The fund held all commercial value of her likeness, posters, magazines, advertising, international rights. But the beneficiary was not Marilyn. She had been completely cut out. One line was shaky, ink-smudged. "If I disappear, they'll say it was an accident." "But Edgar, you understand more than anyone. You know where my money is." The unreleased film contract made everything worse. Abnormal clauses, coerced signatures, lifetime image rights sold for a laughably tiny fee. Tanner read it and gritted his teeth. They stole her entire life. The final stacked notes, apparently from Arthur Kellerman, detailed the exact path of the embezzled money. The numbers cut through Cole like knives. Total current market value of the fund, estimated at nearly $500 million. No one spoke for a long time. Only the slow whir of the old reel machine and the smell of yellowed paper mixed with sea salt. Rafe broke the silence first. "Cole, do you even realize what you just found?" Cole didn't answer. He felt something heavier than iron and deeper than the ocean drop into his hands. Not money, but Marilyn's final truth, a truth she was never allowed to speak. He played the tape again. where Marilyn gasped but forced every last ounce of strength into her final line. "If anyone ever hears this, please don't let them take everything from me." Her voice shook, but it was not weak. It was the voice of someone still fighting. In that moment, Cole understood the feeling Hawk had in the original script, when he had to protect Lily not just because she needed him, but because he could not turn his back on the powerless. Cole looked up at Tanner and Rafe. The lost look was gone from his eyes. They were sharp now, focused, heavy with duty. "We can't let this disappear." Tanner nodded slowly. "I know, but from now on you have to be extremely careful. You're not just up against a studio. You're up against people willing to bury the truth for 6 decades. Cole gripped the tape reel tight, feeling like he was holding Marilyn Monroe's heart that no one had ever protected. News of Cole Maddox winning the House spread like wildfire on ocean wind, but it took Victor Harlan exactly one night to flip the narrative in his favor. The next morning, as Cole woke up in the still dusty new house filled with creaking damp wood, his phone blew up. Notifications, texts, emails, dozens of news links. The first headline froze his blood. Hell's Angels member seizes property tied to Hollywood national security. The article continued. Insider sources claim the house recently purchased by biker Cole Maddox contains classified documents related to historic film industry figures. Unauthorized possession may be considered a threat to national cultural security. Cole threw the phone down, collapsed into a chair, feeling like someone had dumped ice water over him. Other outlets ran. Ex-Hell's Angel with criminal record now holds Marilyn Monroe legacy. A tabloid even dug up an old mugshot from his wrongful arrest with the screaming headline, "Dangerous biker owns Marilyn's house, Hollywood on alert." In just hours, Cole went from nobody to public enemy number 1. People knew nothing about him, nothing about the lives he had saved, the endless work to survive. They only saw the tattoos, the old Harley, and the words Hell's Angels, and that was enough to brand him the villain. Just like Hawk in the hospital hallway, Cole was cornered, denied explanation, denied protection. By noon, 2 Santa Monica PD cruisers parked right out front. A female officer knocked hard. "Mr. Maddox, open up. We have an inspection order." Cole swallowed hard and opened the door. 3 officers stepped in, scanning every corner like they expected to find bodies. "We've received reports you're holding classified material." Cole tried to stay calm. "I didn't. What I found is personal property belonging to Marilyn Monroe. I haven't done anything wrong." The older officer crossed his arms. "We'll decide that. This house may be sealed pending investigation." Cole clenched his fists, head down, fighting the explosion building inside. Just yesterday he thought he had found a way up. Now they wanted to take everything again, without even giving him time to speak. After an hour of searching they left temporarily, but warned, "Do not leave town. We'll be back." The second the door closed, the house seemed to shrink, darken, grow colder. Ocean wind slipped through the cracks but couldn't chase away the suffocation. He was being condemned by society without a single person asking him a question. He knew that feeling. He had seen it in the eyes of old bikers misunderstood by their own families, heard it in Hawk's voice between 2 cop cars in the old story. "Nobody believes me until it's too late." That afternoon, Cole stepped out for coffee near Pacific Coast Highway and immediately felt the stares, full of suspicion, fear, even hatred. A girl spotted the tattoo on his neck and pulled her friend away. A man whispered, "The bikers are at it again." Cole wanted to explain, wanted to shout that they didn't know anything, but his voice caught in his throat. On the way home he saw the same black SUV from before parked on the corner, windows tinted. He stopped to look. It pulled away instantly. Clear sign. Someone was watching him closely. When Cole got home, Tanner and Rafe were already waiting, faces grim. Tanner held out his phone. "Look at this. A fresh article. Titan Gate petitions court to protect film assets. Suspects biker of illegal possession." Cole let out a dry, broken laugh. "I've had the keys less than 24 hours. Rafe put a hand on his shoulder. "They want you to panic. Don't give it to them." But even with Rafe's words, Cole felt an invisible noose tightening. While the 3 talked strategy, his phone rang again. A new email. Sender, Riley Donovan. "I know what's happening to you. I believe you've done nothing wrong. I've been tracking Titan Gate's moves and discovered they prepared this media campaign weeks ago, before the auction even happened. That means they knew something was in that house, and they don't want you to have it." Cole read every word, heart pounding harder. For the first time in 48 hours of chaos, someone didn't see him as a criminal or a social burden. Riley continued. If you're willing, I want to meet. I believe Marilyn tried to leave something behind. And you're standing exactly where she wanted the truth to be found. Cole sat down, closed his eyes. Amid the distant waves and creaking wood from the sea wind, he heard Marilyn's voice again in his head. Don't let them bury me again. That sentence cut through all the media noise, the hatred, the misunderstanding like a compass needle. He opened his eyes, looked at Tanner and Rafe. What are you going to do? Tanner asked. Cole answered low but hard as steel. Protect the truth, even if I have to fight the whole world. For the first time in years, Cole saw the road ahead, clearly. He was no longer fighting just to save himself. He was fighting for a woman gone 60 years, yet still robbed of her voice. And in that moment, even while the world labeled him the bad guy, the criminal, the dangerous biker, Cole knew he was doing the right thing, the thing Marilyn needed, the thing no one else but him could do. Riley was the only one who believed him. But sometimes one light is enough to illuminate an entire dark room. Word of Cole Maddox being torn apart by the media spread so fast that just 2 days later, familiar faces he hadn't seen in years began showing up outside. The Dune House, Hell's Angels brothers from Ventura, San Diego, even Riverside. No roaring engines or chaos like people imagined. They arrived with heavy but calm steps, faces shaded by bandanas, eyes serious from men who had seen enough injustice to know when a brother needed shielding. 20 in total. Not an army, but an old family pulled back together by the world's unfairness toward one of their own. Cole stepped onto the porch when he heard engines cut off down the street. He saw Rafe beside Mitch Fallon, Tanner leaning against his Harley, arms crossed, and bikers he thought he'd never see again. Docs, Harlan, Miguel, Trey, the guys who rode across Nevada with him, carried each other when wounded, slept under the same night sky almost 20 years ago. Cole's throat tightened. What the hell are you all doing here? I don't want to drag you into trouble. Mitch cut him off, voice gravel rough but steady. You're not dragging us into anything, you're being crushed, and brothers don't stand by and watch. Those words made Cole turn away so they wouldn't see his eyes burning. For the first time in years of living like a ghost, he truly felt he wasn't alone, but their presence alone made all of Santa Monica tense as a wire. Neighbors along Pacific Coast Highway grew nervous. Some closed up early, others whispered, "The bikers have taken over, this is going to get big." Yet the reality was the complete opposite of the fear the media had planted. From day one, instead of drinking and making noise, the bikers split into pairs and spread out across the beachfront neighborhood. Miguel and Trey walked Santa Monica Beach picking up trash, collecting abandoned fishing nets, hauling big pieces of plastic out of the sand. Docs and Harlan went door to door asking who needed porch repairs or fence painting, and did it for free, not taking a cent. An old lady 2 houses down, Mrs. Harrison, trembled at first when 2 huge bikers knocked. But after half an hour of talking, she was laughing so hard, even they were surprised. Turns out she needed her garage light replaced and backyard grass cut. Impossible jobs for an elderly woman living alone. Harlan rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Docs mowed like it was his own yard. When they left, she pressed a bag of fresh-baked cookies into their hands and said, "You boys are far kinder than I thought." That story spread the way only real actions can. By afternoon, the suspicious stares from neighbors started to soften. Kids next door peeked at the Harleys and giggled because they thought they looked cool, not scary. The bikers didn't care what people said. They only knew Cole needed them, and they would stay. Tanner set up a rotating watch, but peacefully, no visible weapons, just guys drinking coffee on the steps, watching strange SUVs roll past. Rafe put up a small sign in Cole's front yard. Not a gang, not here to cause trouble, just brothers. Anyone who read it had to pause, because it told exactly what they were. Giant men in worn leather with hearts soft as wet sand, trying to shield one of their own from the world's misunderstanding. That evening when the ocean wind picked up, they all sat around a portable grill in the yard. Cole told them about the reel-to-reel tape, Marilyn's voice, the stolen $500 million fund, and how Victor Harlan might be connected. Everyone went so quiet Cole could hear waves hitting the pier pilings. When he finished, no one asked why he was doing this. They only asked, "What do we need to do?" Biker loyalty. Loyalty was never pretty promises. It was simply showing up. That was all. Meanwhile, neighbors still watched from a distance. A couple on a walk saw Trey untangling fishing line from a seabird cage. An Uber driver saw Mitch stop to help a woman change a flat tire. A group of teens filmed the bikers cleaning every bottle and can off the beach, clips that got thousands of views in a single day. First comments were stunned. These are Hell's Angels? I thought they were dangerous. Look at them. Maybe the news has been lying to us. Cole started hearing things like that whenever he passed the local coffee shop. At first he just nodded a quiet thank you. But on the third day a little kid ran up and handed him a perfect white seashell he'd found and said, "I think you're a good guy." Cole froze. Not because of the shell, but because it had been so long since anyone looked at him and saw past the ink in the past and just saw him. That night, while everyone slept, Cole sat alone on the porch staring at the silent row of Harleys. He hadn't seen this sight in 10 years. Men who used to argue like dogs now eating Mrs. Harrison's cookies, swapping life stories and laughing like life had never kicked the shit out of them. But what made Cole's eyes sting was the new yet familiar feeling he thought was gone forever. He was no longer alone, and in that moment he understood the fight ahead would be brutal, but he wouldn't have to face it alone anymore. He had his brothers. He had someone who believed in him, Riley. He had Marilyn's truth. He had a reason to keep going, and once a biker has a reason, nothing on earth can make him stop. On the fourth night after the bikers arrived in Santa Monica, when the neighbors had started getting used to seeing big rough men picking up trash, mowing lawns, carrying groceries for the elderly, and collecting bottles along the beach, Riley Donovan showed up again at the door of the Dune house holding a thick envelope and eyes mixed with panic and excitement. She had just run down Pacific Coast Highway, breathing hard like someone trying to shake an invisible hand off her back. "Cole," she said, voice low but urgent, "I need you in the attic right now. I think I found what they'll do anything to keep hidden." Cole didn't ask questions, just signaled Tanner and Rafe to follow. They climbed the old stairs, footsteps echoing in the dusty, mildewed space. Riley pointed to the far attic wall where the paneling was slightly off, like it had been disturbed before. "I saw this seam," she whispered, "and I think someone hid something in here, then tried to cover it back up." Cole pried gently with a crowbar. Rotten wood crumbled away, revealing a dark hollow. He reached in and felt cold metal. When he pulled it out, the flashlight beam glinted off a small tube wrapped in oilcloth and tied with old rope. Everyone held their breath. Cole unwrapped it. Inside was a roll of microfilm. Not another reel-to-reel tape, but film in the most classified format, typically used for legal documents, financial records, or evidence meant to be locked away forever. Tanner took it, held it to the light. 1950s microfilm. This stuff usually holds law office files, bank records, contracts, and if they walled it up, he didn't finish, but everyone knew this could bring down an empire. They rushed it downstairs to the living room and spread everything on the table. Riley pulled out her portable microfilm reader, the kind investigative reporters use, and loaded the roll. Tiny but razor-sharp images appeared. Asset ledgers, signatures, transfer agreements, internal memos, all tied to Marilyn Monroe. Cole stared at the numbers flashing across the screen and felt an invisible hand squeezing his chest. One long list showed income from her image. Posters, magazines, international licensing, all under her name. Current estimated value, nearly $500 million. But in the beneficiary column, Marilyn's name never appeared once. Riley clenched her fists. They didn't just steal her money. They erased her entire financial existence as a cultural icon. On page 3 was Arthur Kellerman's clear signature, the last owner of the house, with a note, "Keep confidential per party A. If Marilyn attempts disclosure, stop at all costs." Tanner read the next line aloud. Voice catching. Marilyn requested a second copy be sent to Edgar Wallace, but it was intercepted before completion. Riley looked at Cole. She knew they were stealing from her. She was trying to turn the tables, and they stopped her, by any means. Silence fell for several seconds. It was so quiet Cole could hear distant waves hitting the beach and the old wood popping in the roof. He stared at the screen where Marilyn's shaky but sharp handwriting appeared. "If they take everything from me, at least let the truth remain." Cole felt his heart being crushed. He remembered her voice from the earlier tape, trembling yet resolute, in pain but unbowed. He heard it again, this time with his whole heart. "Don't let them bury me again." Rafe jumped to his feet. "Jesus, Cole, you're holding what Titan Gate fears most. Not the house, not the safe, the evidence." Tanner nodded. Proof of one of the biggest embezzlements Hollywood ever tried to hide. Riley turned the reader so they could see a chain of offshore bank codes, Cayman Islands, Panama, Switzerland. This is the money trail. Within 48 hours of Marilyn's death, every dime of her image rights was moved overseas. They funneled it into trust that didn't carry her name, then split the profits. It's all here. Contracts, letters, transfer orders. One major outlet sees this. Hollywood explodes. Cole braced his hands on the table and dropped his head, not from shock, but because the weight of this truth was so enormous the whole room seemed to tilt. A woman dead for 60 years, branded by rumors, scandals, loneliness, had fought to the last second, and now her final voice wasn't in some archive, wasn't in lawyers' hands, didn't belong to Titan Gate or any power. It was in the hands of Cole Maddox, a broke, misunderstood biker. Riley placed a hand on his shoulder. You get it, right? If you release this, you don't just clear Marilyn's name. You rewrite Hollywood history. Cole lifted his head, eyes burning with a fire that had been rekindled deep inside. In that moment he was no longer the hopeless man sleeping in a truck at Point Mugu, no longer the biker crushed by the press, no longer the guy the whole city looked at with fear and suspicion. He had become the only person standing between truth and 60 years of darkness, and he understood, like Hawk standing in that hospital protecting Lily, that sometimes the world doesn't give you a choice. It drops a responsibility into the lap of the one person everyone thinks is least worthy, because only he has the heart big enough to carry it. Cole took a hard breath, looked at the microfilm, the numbers, Marilyn's handwriting. I'm not letting them take this, he said, voice low but sharp as steel. Not again. Tanner gave a small smile. Knew you'd say that. Riley looked at Cole for a long time, then nodded, eyes shining with absolute trust. You're about to fight the battle Hollywood has dodged for 60 years, but you're not fighting alone. Cole glanced around the house at the people who had come for him, for loyalty, for justice, for what was right. That night, after the sun had sunk behind Santa Monica Pier and streetlights painted long gold streaks across the water, Cole and the bikers were still huddled around the table studying every frame of the microfilm, trying to grasp the full depth of the truth they had touched. But the fragile calm didn't last. At 1:14 a.m. Tanner shot to his feet, hand up for silence. Footsteps in the yard. Lights went out instantly, leaving only the pale green glow of the microfilm reader casting shadows on the wall like a silent watchful eye. Cole peered through the curtain slit, 4 figures dressed all in black moving along the fence toward the back door. One carried lock-picking tools, 2 others held what looked like electric batons. Not locals, not curious kids. Hired professionals, quiet, trained, and they knew exactly what they were after. Cole motioned everyone back. No violence, he whispered. We record everything. Rafe pulled out his phone. Tanner activated a mini camera. Miguel climbed upstairs to film from the window. They didn't charge out swinging. They didn't shout threats. They just stood there, silent, disciplined, a living wall. When the back lock clicked open, Cole stood in the middle of the living room, hand resting on the table where the microfilm sat. The door swung wide, cold ocean wind rushing in with 4 dark figures. The lead man flicked on a flashlight, beam hitting Cole square in the face. Hand over the microfilm, he said, voice flat and heavy as stone. Do it now, or you'll regret it. Cole said nothing. He just tilted his chin toward the window. The man turned and saw Miguel filming everything. He muttered a curse. Turn that off, biker. Miguel didn't move. The whole crew formed a protective ring around Cole and Riley. No pushing, no fighting, just unbreakable presence that froze the intruders. This wasn't a brawl. This was men experienced enough to know violence would kill the truth, not protect it. The lockpick guy reached for his phone to call someone, but Tanner spoke up. We're recording from 3 angles. One wrong move, and this goes online. You want all of Santa Monica to know who you are. The call stopped before it started. The baton guy stepped forward. Don't think some amateur videos will save you. We have orders to recover property. Cole answered, voice so cold it raised goosebumps. Orders from who? Silence. No one answered. The silence was the answer. Everyone knew the order came from Titan Gate, from Victor Harlan. The 4 scanned the room, realized they were being filmed from 3 directions. One pulled his mask down, exposing his face, signaling this job was no longer clean. We'll be back, he said, and next time it won't be this polite. Then all 4 melted into the darkness, as fast and scary as they had appeared. When the door shut, Cole felt the air heavier than the waves outside. We just avoided unnecessary bloodshed, Tanner said. But Victor won't stop. He knows you have the microfilm. He knows you hold the key to exposing Hollywood's real face. And just as Tanner predicted, before morning Victor played his next card. A smear campaign more vicious than anything yet. The biggest Los Angeles paper ran front page. Biker Maddox illegally holds documents tied to federal investigation. Another insider sources. Microfilm may contain information dangerous to national cultural security. A tabloid screamed, Marilyn Monroe house seized by biker gang. Hollywood in shock. Cole read the lines and felt someone slowly strangling him. Victor didn't just want the documents. He wanted Cole completely discredited, branded a criminal nationwide. So when he finally took the microfilm back, no one would care if Cole got crushed in the process. Police showed up again. This time they weren't gentle. They brought a temporary sealing notice. Mr. Maddox, if you do not surrender the cultural heritage documents, we will be forced to seize the house for investigation. The entire biker crew stood on the porch. No threats, no contact, just filming everything. Riley stepped forward, handed over her press card. If you execute an illegal seizure, this story hits the front page tomorrow. The chief looked at Riley, then at the wall of bikers behind her. No words, no pressure, just the unmistakable presence of men who had nothing left to lose except the truth. Finally, they backed off, leaving an ultimatum. Mr. Maddox, you are under investigation. We will return. When the cruisers left, Cole felt torn in half. He knew he stood at a fork with no middle road. Hand over the microfilm, the truth dies forever. Keep the microfilm, he gets charged. The house seized, maybe loses his freedom. He stood at the window staring at the foggy ocean, the tiny roll of film in his hand weighing like the whole world. Riley came up beside him, voice soft. You're not choosing for yourself, you're choosing for Marilyn, for the voice she never got to use. Cole closed his eyes. In the darkness behind his lids he heard Marilyn again, trembling, desperate, but carrying the last spark of a woman who had nothing left but truth. If this disappears with me, then my whole life disappears too. Cole opened his eyes, looked at the bikers out in the yard washing bikes, fixing the roof, brewing coffee, laughing quietly. Men's society had misunderstood their whole lives, yet still willing to put themselves in the line of fire for him. In that moment he knew he could not back down, could not let Victor win, could not let the truth be buried one more time, even if it cost him his life. Word of the break-in spread fast through Hollywood's underbelly, and Riley knew their time was shrinking by the hour. She spent the entire night digging through the microfilm clues, every name, address, handwritten line, until she spotted one tiny detail sharp as a needle, the initials, EWJ. 3 letters made her bolt upright, heart racing. Edgar Wallace Jr., son of Marilyn Monroe's last attorney. She searched records and found a quiet address in Pasadena, where Wallace Jr. had lived reclusively since his father died. The next morning Riley told Cole and the bikers, if anyone knows the truth Marilyn wanted left behind, it's him. Cole didn't need convincing. He, Riley, Tanner, Rafe, and Miguel jumped in the trucks and tore through LA traffic carrying a mix of hope and dread. When they reached the small house, a thin man in his late 60s with bright razor-sharp eyes opened the door. He instinctively stepped back at the sight of the bikers, but Riley raised her hands fast. We're not here for trouble. We're here because of Marilyn. That name stopped him cold. Riley showed him the handwritten letter from Marilyn they had found in the safe. Wallace Jr. stared at the shaky, soft, slanted script of a woman the world knew by face but rarely by heart. His lips trembled. He touched the words like they were sacred relics. I recognize her writing, he said quietly. My father kept an original letter, but someone took it after he died, Riley answered. We think the copy is this microfilm. We need you to confirm. Cole placed the roll on the living room table. When the images lit up the portable reader, Wallace Jr. sucked in a sharp breath. This is it. My God, this is the file my father kept. Marilyn wasn't paranoid. She knew they were stealing her image. Hands shaking, he put on glasses and read line by line. Coerced contracts, offshore transfers, orders to seal records, Kellerman's notes, everything his father had told him before dying. My father tried to blow this open, Wallace Jr. sighed, voice breaking, but they silenced him. He said if Marilyn didn't speak for herself, no one else could. Then she died, and he lost the power to act. Until the end he regretted not protecting her. Cole felt his heart clamp like a chain. Everything was becoming clearer. Marilyn had been so alone that her death became the perfect chance to steal what little she had left. And now, 60 years later, Her truth rested in the hands of a misunderstood biker and an old lawyer living in a little house. Wallace Jr. looked Cole straight in the eye. "What do you want from me?" Cole didn't hesitate. "The truth, and your testimony." Wallace Jr. studied Cole for a long time, searching to see if this was just someone looking to exploit Marilyn's name. But what he saw was a man carrying his own scars yet standing up for a dead woman he never met. He nodded. "I'll stand with you. I'll do what my father couldn't." Riley let out a relieved breath. Cole gripped Wallace Jr. Said hand hard, feeling strength flow back into him. But as they prepared to leave, Tanner blocked the window, eyes narrowing. Black SUV out there. Heavy tint, studio security or private contractors. Cole understood instantly. Victor had sniffed out their visit to the lawyer, and he wasn't letting them leave Pasadena easily. "Back way," Cole said. "Move as a unit. He doesn't go alone." What followed was one of those rare moments when bikers became a real shield. Rafe and Miguel ran ahead to check the alley. Tanner filmed every move. Cole supported Wallace Jr. Riley stayed close. The rest of the crew formed an outer ring. No weapons drawn. No threats. Just silent, disciplined movement of men forced to protect truth with their own bodies. When they reached the parking lot, the black SUV inched forward. Testing, the bikers instantly fanned out in front of it. Not aggressive, just unbreakable, making it clear no one touches this man. The driver's eyes wavered. After several breathless seconds, the SUV reversed and left the neighborhood without a word. When everyone was safely back at the Dune house, Wallace Jr. sat down still shaking. "Now I understand why she was terrified," he said.
"If they're following you like this, you really do have what they want buried forever."
Cole didn't answer. He just looked at the microfilm on the table. The light reflecting off the tiny roll made it look like a thin crack of light in a dark room. Riley sat beside Cole. "We have a witness. We have documents. We have the truth. This isn't your fight alone anymore, Cole. This is the fight of millions who loved Marilyn, and of justice forgotten for 60 years. Cole took a slow breath, eyes heavy but bright. "Then we fight, all the way." In that moment, amid the foggy Santa Monica beach and the endless crash of waves, Cole felt what was happening had grown bigger than himself. This was the last chance to give a voice back to a woman the world had used and discarded, loved and destroyed, celebrated and forgotten. And this time, as the truth stood on the edge of being erased once more, bikers had risen to stand against an entire empire to protect it. The next morning, Santa Monica woke under a thick sea fog like a white veil draped over the pier, and in that mist, the greatest showdown of Cole's life was waiting to erupt. Wallace Jr. was ready to unveil the microfilm to the press, and Riley had arranged for reporters to gather at the end of the Santa Monica Pier boardwalk, where morning light cast long shimmering streaks across the water. Cole, Tanner, and Rafe escorted him along the pier, amid crashing waves and the cries of gulls echoing in the air. But halfway across, dark figures emerged from both ends, closing in like the jaws of a shark. Men in black suits, dark sunglasses. Titan Gate's security team. One man in the center, hair slicked back, face cold, stepped forward, his voice cutting through the damp air. "Mr. Wallace, Mr. Maddox, you're coming with us, now." Riley stepped back, heart pounding, while Wallace Jr. clutched his briefcase tighter. Cole moved in front, a living wall. "Nobody's going with you," he said, voice low but solid as steel. The security lead smirked. "Who do you think you are, biker? This isn't your game." He raised a hand to signal his team to close in. Then a roar of engines thundered from the pier's entrance, deep, low, familiar like a metal heartbeat. A line of headlights pierced the fog. 40 bikers, from Ventura, San Diego, Riverside, Long Beach, all tearing onto the pier, tires rumbling on the wood. But as they neared, they cut their engines in unison. The sudden silence made the whole boardwalk hold its breath. Cole looked around. Mitch, Dox, Miguel, Trey, Harlan, every brother who'd shown up in his darkest moments, stood here, shoulder to shoulder. No orders, no words needed. They dismounted and formed two human barriers along the path, forcing the security team back a few steps. No raised fists, no threats, just standing, back straight, silent. But that silence was more terrifying than any shout. Sea wind whipped through their leather jackets, fluttering a small Hells Angels flag on one biker's shoulder. It wasn't a battle flag. It was a statement: "We won't strike unless you make us." Locals started gathering. Tourists stopped to film. "What's going on?" someone asked. Another whispered. The bikers are protecting someone. Phones came out, live streams started, and within minutes, hundreds were watching live. A little girl said, "Mom, they're shielding that silver-haired man." And then within that unbreakable biker wall, Wallace Jr. stepped forward, Riley at his side. He opened his briefcase, pulled out the microfilm and copies of key pages, and held them high for every camera pointed at him. "My name is Edgar Wallace Jr.," he declared, voice ringing in the cold fog. "My father was Marilyn Monroe's attorney. These documents prove powerful people embezzled the entire value of her image after her death." The crowd buzzed. Reporters pushed forward. Cameras clicked furiously. For 60 years, this truth was hidden. Today I'm releasing it because Marilyn deserves to be heard, because justice deserves to exist. A furious roar came from behind. Victor Harlan appeared, face red with rage. Gone was his usual cold smile. He bellowed, "Those are stolen documents. Arrest him." But as he took one step, 40 bikers shifted as one, not advancing, not retreating, just moving slightly. That alone stopped Victor like he'd hit a steel wall. One biker, Doc, spoke low, loud enough for a mic to catch. "We're recording everything. One wrong move and your career's done." Victor scanned the crowd, saw hundreds of phones filming. He tried to stay calm, but the vein at his temple pulsed visibly. Wallace Jr. pressed on, voice stronger. "This is the list of offshore accounts Titan Gate and other studios used to siphon Marilyn Monroe's assets out of the U.S. A reporter shouted, "Is that evidence on the microfilm?" "Yes. And I sent copies to 2 major outlets before coming here." That was the final blow. Victor's face went white, like he'd been stabbed. He lurched forward a few steps, only to be stopped again by the bikers' sheer presence, massive frames and fearless eyes. "Filthy bikers," Victor growled. But Mitch stepped forward half a step, voice like thunder. "Watch your mouth." The entire pier went dead silent. In that moment, before hundreds of witnesses, thousands on live stream, Victor realized he'd lost control of the narrative. No more twisting truth with media, no more bullying with police, no more hiding what he'd done in the dark, because Wallace Jr. had done what Titan Gate feared most: expose the truth to the public. A reporter called out, "Mr. Maddox, why did you protect these documents?" Cole didn't look at the camera. He gazed out at the sea, where the fog was lifting and sunlight hit the water in long silver streaks. "Because Marilyn deserved to be heard," he said simply. "And if I didn't protect it, who would?" The words didn't need volume. They cut through the crowd like a vow. A gust swept the pier, blowing Cole's hair back. The sun rose higher, glinting off the microfilm in Wallace Jr., his hand, making it sparkle like a revived memory. Victor backed off, for the first time completely powerless. He turned, ordered his security to retreat. But every camera had caught his expression, the look of a powerful man watching his empire crack. As he walked away, a single clap rang out from the crowd, then another, then dozens, then hundreds. The applause spread across Santa Monica Pier, blending with the waves and morning light, a recognition of truth unearthed after 60 years. Cole looked at the 40 bikers around him, silent, humble, standing like pillars. For the first time he saw people look at them not with fear, but with gratitude. And in that moment, Cole knew justice had begun to turn. News of Wallace Jr. This microfilm reveal spread faster than Santa Monica's sea wind. Within hours, every major LA outlet ran blazing headlines. Proof of Marilyn Monroe's 60-year embezzlement exposed. Online news exploded. Titan Gate faces accusations of stealing $500 million from Marilyn's legacy. Exclusive files. Biker Maddox holds key to historic truth. Videos of 40 bikers forming a human shield around Wallace Jr. went viral at unprecedented speed. People shared Cole's line, "If I didn't protect it, who would?" Millions watched. Millions commented. And for the first time in his life, Cole Maddox wasn't a name tied to a rap sheet, tattoos, or a rusty old Harley. He became a symbol of something rare in a scandal-driven age: courage to defend the truth. Riley called Cole just a day after the pier showdown. "You can't imagine what's happening." Reporters from New York Times, Washington Post, BBC, they're all contacting Wallace Jr. They want the microfilm. They want to meet you. Cole wasn't used to being the center of attention. He just said, as long as they use the truth right, but Hollywood couldn't stay quiet long. 3 days later, the California Department of Justice announced a full financial investigation into Titan Gate Studios and 3 other studios named in the microfilm. Bank accounts were frozen. A slew of lawyers were subpoenaed. A few power players quietly stepped down from executive chairs. Meanwhile, major outlets launched investigative series. An in-depth LA Times piece broke down how the $500 million fund was illegally created, draining Marilyn's image for decades. Another dove into how Kellerman was threatened into silence. And most notably, Riley Donovan's article became a centerpiece. Marilyn's life finally told in her own words through what she left behind. It ended with "The truth was Marilyn's final gift to us, and one biker had the courage to hold it." Cole read those words in silence, a feeling rising he couldn't name. Not pride, not relief, but a kind of peace he thought had died with Jenna years ago. As the investigation widened, Titan Gate Studios descended into chaos. Victor Harlan was suspended as CEO while the company's legal team faced charges of financial cover-up, falsifying records, abusing power, and destroying evidence. The press hounded him, his name on every talk show, every news ticker. The clip of him blocked by 40 bikers on the pier became a nationwide meme. One comment below read, "He wasn't scared of the law, he was scared of the truth." Meanwhile, Wallace Jr. stood before CNN cameras, holding up a microfilm copy and saying, "I didn't think I could do this when I was younger, but today I'm doing it for my father and for Marilyn." Millions teared up. Public pressure forced California courts to act fast. A preliminary ruling came down. The embezzled $500 million fund had to be recovered and redirected to its original purpose, supporting female artists exploited by the old studio system. When Riley heard, she broke down crying on the phone. Cole stood in his yard a long time, watching the Santa Monica sea glow with sunset, feeling like Marilyn had finally been given a piece of the justice life had stolen from her. And then something Cole never expected. Santa Monica PD canceled the order to seal the Dune house and sent a notice clearing him, stating no evidence showed Cole held illegal documents. "Mr. Maddox," the inspector said on the call, voice softer than before, "I think we misjudged you." Cole didn't respond. He just said, "I only did what she needed me to do." In the days that followed, the press stopped calling Cole a dangerous biker and started naming him the guardian of Marilyn Monroe's legacy. One paper even wrote, "This story couldn't happen in Hollywood, but it happened with a biker." Neighbors who once avoided him now brought homemade pies to his door. An elderly couple handed him a photo they'd taken with Marilyn in their youth, saying, "Because of you we understand her better. Thank you." But what moved Cole most was a handwritten letter from a young woman. "I've had my voice taken too. Your story gives me hope that one day I'll be heard." Cole tucked the letter into his jacket pocket, next to Jenna's photo, a reminder that the real value of courage isn't in who you confront, but who you stand for. And on that glowing Santa Monica afternoon, as the bikers sat in a circle on the beach, eating Mrs. Harrison's cookies and laughing like they'd lifted the sky, Cole knew one thing for sure. He was no longer the broken man sleeping in a truck at Point Mugu. He had become the keeper of Marilyn's final light. And more importantly, he had been vindicated, not just before the law but before his own life. In the days after the truth exploded, Santa Monica changed in ways no one in the biker crew could have imagined. The neighborhood that once eyed them warily now nodded respectfully whenever they passed. Locals left morning coffee, homemade pies, and pitchers of lemonade on the front yard of the Dune house as quiet thank yous. An old woman near the pier stopped her walker and told Cole, "I always believed Marilyn was so alone before she died. Because of you, I believe she isn't alone anymore." Cole wasn't used to recognition. It unsettled him, but it also warmed him in a way he hadn't felt since Jenna died. Little by little, the dignity and worth that life had once ground into the dirt were handed back to him, not with money, but with the changed looks in people's eyes. Yet Cole knew he had to do more than stand and watch. He decided to turn Marilyn's house, the place that had once been a hideout, a vault for fear and a silenced voice, into the Marilyn Memorial Studio, a small but meaningful space dedicated to supporting young actresses who were exploited, used, and stripped of their voices by a powerful, unjust system. Riley nearly cried when she heard the idea. "Do you realize," she said, "this house was used to hide secrets, now it will be used to expose truth." Bikers from all over volunteered to restore the place. Mitch and Trey repainted the walls in the original cream and soft sea green to keep the 1950s feel. Miguel and Rafe refinished the wood floors, polishing every plank like they were polishing a legacy. Tanner rebuilt a small studio corner to store copies of the microfilm, contracts, and never-before-seen photos of Marilyn that Wallace Jr. had kept. They worked in total respect, no joking, no noise, because to them, this wasn't just a house. It was a thank you to a woman forgotten in her own pain. On the day the Marilyn Memorial Studio opened, hundreds poured onto Santa Monica Pier. No red carpet, no glamour, just gentle sunset light and the whisper of sea wind. On the walls hung photos of Marilyn that weren't the polished studio shots, but candid ones. Her laughing without makeup, tucking hair behind her ear, standing on the beach on a cold morning, fragile yet strong in a way Hollywood never told. Riley wrote a long piece for The New Yorker titled "The Man Who Gave Marilyn Monroe Her Voice Back." It spread so widely it was read aloud on national television. Every line was gratitude. Gratitude to Marilyn, to Attorney Wallace, to the bikers who dared stand between Hollywood's darkness and the light, and never stepped back. And gratitude to Cole, the man who had no reason to fight, yet chose to stand up. When Riley handed him the printed article, he read it in silence. The words touched the deepest part of him, the part that once believed he deserved nothing good. "You did it, Cole," Riley whispered. "No one can ever take this from you again." But what moved Cole most was how the community now saw the bikers. Men once treated as threats, judged by leather and ink, had become quiet heroes. When they walked into the coffee shop, people let them cut the line. When they crossed the beach, kids waved. When they stood in front of the Marilyn Memorial Studio, people took photos not to mock, but to remember the moment that men's society had rejected, did what Hollywood and the legal system never dared: protect a woman, even though she was long gone. Then came the day they had to leave Santa Monica, not because they were no longer welcome, but because their job was done. They hadn't come for praise, they came to keep a promise to a brother and to guard the truth. So when they strapped on helmets, fired up their Harleys and prepared to ride back to Ventura, no one shouted grand goodbyes. Cole stood on the lawn as each one hugged him, gripped his hand, clapped his shoulder like they had in the wild days of their youth. "If you ever need us," Mitch said, "just fire it up." Cole gave a rare, genuine smile. As the long line of Harleys rolled away from Santa Monica Pier, people lined both sides of the road and applauded like soldiers returning from a war. No one thought they could win. No horns, no flashbulbs, just the rumble of engines and gratitude carried on the wind. Cole stood alone as the last sound faded. He looked at the house, now lit up, alive, given new purpose, and felt something he hadn't in years. He belonged here, not because of fame, not because of legacy, but because he had done the right thing. And that was enough for a biker to bow his head to the ocean, knowing that life, even when it had been cruel, had finally brought him exactly where he was meant to stand. When the final roar of the Harleys dissolved into the coastal roads back to Ventura, Santa Monica slipped back into its familiar quiet rhythm. Sunset fell slowly, turning the sea into bands of deep orange bleeding into soft purple, and Cole Maddox stood alone on the cold sand where waves rolled in and washed the shore like whispers from the past. He shoved his hands into the pockets of his worn leather jacket, looked up at the endless sky, feeling both empty and full. For years he had run from himself, from mistakes, from the endless ache of losing Jenna. But now, in this moment, for the first time, he stood still. No running, no hiding, no bracing himself, just standing, part of the beach, part of the fading light, part of the truth. He pulled from his pocket the small reel-to-reel player Tanner had fixed for him, and pressed play on Marilyn's recording. Light static, then her voice, soft, trembling, but piercing straight into the heart. "If the truth is all I leave behind, let it live." A stronger gust of sea wind caught his jacket, flapping it like wings weighed down by time but never broken. Cole closed his eyes and let her words sink into his chest, into his bones, into places that had been dark for so long. Because in the end he understood the truth Marilyn left wasn't just on microfilm, not just in contracts or stolen numbers. It was in her will to fight injustice, her will not to be erased from the world as a meaningless tragedy. And somehow fate had thrown that will into the hands of the most underestimated biker to prove that the keeper of truth isn't always the powerful one. Sometimes it's just the person who knows pain, knows loss, knows how to stand back up, like Cole Maddox. He opened his eyes and looked toward the house on the hill, once dusty, forgotten, hiding painful secrets. Now golden light spilled from its windows, no longer cold like the first time he stepped inside, Inside, the Marilyn Memorial Studio was ready to welcome women who needed protection, needed to be heard, needed a place to reclaim their own voices. Cole knew he wasn't a hero. He was just the man given the chance to do the right thing when it mattered. And he knew that if Jenna were still alive, she'd be standing beside him right now, resting her head on his shoulder and saying, "See, I told you, you were always a good man." He bent down, picked up a small seashell, the kind Wallace Jr. said Marilyn used to love, and slipped it into his pocket, a reminder that light can be buried in sand but never disappears. After standing motionless for a while amid the breathing ocean, Cole walked to his Harley. The bike was old, still bearing scratches he hadn't repainted, but to Cole it was the witness to every mile of his life, the dark roads, the dangerous curves, and the places where he had found himself again. He turned the key. The Harley growled to life, deep, warm, like an old friend saying hello. Wind whipped around him as he swung a leg over. Cole glanced toward the pier where hundreds had once watched truth rise, where 40 bikers had formed a wall to guard a fragile but unbreakable light. He rolled on the throttle and rode along the pier where the last of the sunset scattered gold across the water like stardust. A few tourists recognized him, waved and smiled. No one feared him anymore. No one saw him as a shadow to avoid. For the first time since the day his life broke in half, Cole felt he was riding not to escape but to come home. At the end of the pier he turned for one last look. Marilyn's house stood there, lights glowing like a lighthouse, not for ships at sea but for anyone who had lost their voice, who had lived in the shadow of power, who had been misunderstood just like him. Now it was no longer forgotten, no longer a box of secrets, no longer the place Marilyn hid from Hollywood's cruelty. It had become a symbol of justice restored, of truth, of courage, and of goodness, even when that goodness came from people society never trusted. Cole kicked the stand down and let the Harley idle a few more seconds. Night wind blew past, carrying the smell of salt and time washed clean. He whispered, "Rest easy, Marilyn. The truth will outlive us all." Then he twisted the throttle, let the Harley's roar blend with the waves and carried that promise far, far away, into the dark, into the sky, into history. And his story ended not with applause, not with camera flashes, but with the warm light from a house that had found its soul again, and with the new life of a biker who had found what he thought was lost forever, himself. If you love heartfelt, unexpected stories like Cole Maddox's journey, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next one. See you tomorrow, where another journey is waiting to be told.